First of all, welcome to our AI Ready webinar, another in our series where we're having conversations with leaders in the AI space, both administrative leaders who are running districts and folks who are helping teachers in the classroom and everybody in between. This is done in partnership with Riverside County Office of Education, and Dr. Heidi Baynes is here to help drive. It's very rare that I would be the kind of the eye candy of the call, where the people with the real thoughts and things like that. But I'm going to take that. Before we dive in, just want to share. We have the AI Ready Educator. It is a course that has been written by Dr. Heidi Baynes, and we're actually looking at kind of making it a little bit even more specific as we go along. But the AI Ready Educator, it is 19 modules. It's up to 300 lessons that covers everything end to end on AI within a school district. It covers everyone from your teachers to your administrators to your classified staff and everybody in between. There are AI modules in there for physical education. There are AI modules in there for specific classes and grades and subject matters. And then there is, of course, a starting module that covers the basis of bias and ethics and that sort of thing. It can be completed as quickly as 15 hours, so you don't have to be spending days and days and days in there. However, if you're a younger teacher, you can earn up to 6 continuing education units through Fresno Pacific University. So you've got kind of there's a lot of choice in there. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of learning. And I didn't mention the best part. The best part is that you have access to Dr. Heidi Baynes. So if you have questions, if you are wondering, how does this apply to my context? How does it apply to my district? You have Heidi to help coach you through that. And for those that don't know, I'm going to jump right in now and start talking about our guests. First of all, Heidi Baynes. So Dr. Heidi Baynes is the coordinator for instructional services at Riverside County Office of Education. This is going to be long because her career is illustrious and long. She brings over 25 years of experience across online, blended, and traditional classrooms. She is focused right now on expanding access to computer science and helping educators use AI and technology to support meaningful learning. Heidi has been through a few iterations of technological changes within education, so this isn't her first rodeo, even though she looks as young as she does. This is not her first rodeo. And she is, if you know her, she is a big champion of computer science. And I first met Heidi many years ago with Alludo, but also when she was very involved with I think it was girls coding or Girls Who Code or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. So very, very, very involved and very, very involved in education in K-12. Brittany Conrad is an education specialist and district ed tech coach and the California Department of Education, and she's on the California Department of Education AI working group, and she is passionate about how schools are integrating AI and digital tools. She has over a decade of K-12 experience, and she champions systems that keep equity and the human side of innovation at the center. I think that I'm probably understating it. I had a wonderful conversation with Brittany. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago on the start of this, and I think you're in for a treat. This is a real a couple of really powerful professional educators here with a lot of experience, a lot of classroom experience, but also now they're outside the classroom, so they've got they're not just talking about things that are theoretical. They know how it affects teachers in the classroom. They know how it affects schools and school districts. So welcome to the two of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the time. This is going to be a fun little conversation. Yeah. We're going to talk today. We've had in the past, we've talked with folks who are leading change through districts. And so how do I take AI at a whole district level or even a county level, and how do I start to bring that into each school site, and how am I working that sort of thing? And we've had those kinds of conversations. Today we're going to start kind of on the opposite side. So we're going to have the conversation about that classroom teacher, and how is AI going to be impacting them? How is it affecting them? And the one message that we really want to convey, and I think I with Alludo, we work with a lot of teachers who are doing professional development, and we're kind of involved on from that outside on a training perspective. But we hear a very common theme, which is there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when it comes to AI. And it goes all the way around from my kids are just going to be cheating, or AI is going to replace me, the robots are coming, like all of those sorts of things. And we're here to say there's been a lot of technological change over the course of human history where people thought they were going to be replaced over and over and over again. It's not the case. You do matter. You matter a lot. In fact, you probably matter more now today as a teacher than you mattered in the past, because this technological change is coming so quickly, and the kids need help, right? They don't necessarily know how to navigate this, and you are one of those people that are going to be helping navigate that. So with that, let's jump in and let's kind of start talking. So my first question to kind of get us started is, you've both sat in the back of classrooms. Maybe share a moment where you saw a teacher doing something with a student that you knew in the moment couldn't have been done with anything else, couldn't have been done with AI, couldn't have been solved with Google. What are some things or a moment where you saw that, hey, this teacher is clearly doing something that a computer can't do. This is a human moment.
So I'll jump in. I am just coming off of chairing a WASC visit to a school out in Sherman Oaks. So I, as an ed specialist, get to go visit our non-public schools. And what I can tell you is the amazing thing about what our educators, our special educators, are doing is really they have a superpower of reading the vibes in a room that a computer cannot do. You know, when we have developed relationships with our students, there is a level of knowing when a student can engage because their threshold for, you know, needs based, like, I'm hungry today, I can fix that for you. Let's get, let's go get our breakfast. I had a really rough night last night, but how can I support you in that way? And so knowing just kind of how to interact in the relationship that they have with students, that we have with our students, being able to pick up on just how someone walks in a room.
Yeah.
You've been in a room with someone and they
Yeah.
walk in and you just know the kind of day they're having and the adjustments that happen as a teacher, as an instructional leader in the in between time before that student comes through the door and gets to their seat are
Right.
things that
Seconds. Yeah.
Well, it's very common, right? It's a very common phrase, especially with politicians, like they know how to read the room, right? That's a, this seems to be a skill that you're kind of going towards, is that a teacher needs to know how to be able to read the room.
I think just in the same vein that Brittany is talking about, like seeing the way a teacher can motivate, whether it's a single student or a whole class of students, whether it's through tough content or, tough times outside of school, like that's something that's irreplaceable. And again, it's like reading that room, and sometimes knowing that a student needs something, maybe even before the student knows that they need something, right? Being able to provide those supports, whether it's, right in that moment, or getting ahead of what might, of the things a student might need, and providing those things. But the things our teachers do for students in our schools across Riverside County, California, United States, are so far beyond just providing content and teaching content. They are the heart of the education system, right? And without the teachers like love, compassion, empathy, devotion to their students, like learning doesn't happen. And so, I have one of the benefits of being in my position, and I wish all teachers had this opportunity, is I do get to see a ton of classrooms, and I see teachers doing things that I wish I would have known when I was still teaching, right? They're just so good at their jobs and so clever in the way that content is delivered and the way students are supported. But it's irreplaceable with AI or any other technology system. Any other thing you want to deliver online doesn't compare to what a teacher can do for their students in person in the classroom, regardless of how their content's being delivered.
Do you think that the teachers, I mean, there is a lot of, there's seemingly, and maybe it's just amplified by social media and that sort of thing, maybe it's not as bad as this, but do you think that teachers, they're under a lot of pressure? Do you think they underestimate their abilities in that classroom, their abilities to do these things that you're talking about?
I think underestimate is I think there's a recognition there. I think there is a lot that a teacher is asked to do, and there is a recognition of, right, as a teacher, I don't know how there's, right, thousands of decisions instantaneously in a day. I think the interesting thing that we see, especially in terms of how to approach these things without feeling a level of like burnout, and how am I supposed to achieve all of this and understand that, is, right, we keep seeing the floor being raised for teachers in terms of, what's being asked for that to happen in a classroom, and how they're intending to deliver lessons to students, how they're measuring data, how they're doing all these things. So the floor has been raised. But I think that teachers, that shift towards the valuing of the relationships, right? Again, you can't learn without having that relationship first. The documents and the data aren't really what motivate a student all the time, right? It's the relationships that they have with the teachers.
Right. Do you think that the teachers appreciate how important that is and how good they are at that? Like, how is it, or do you think that they're so busy and buried that they maybe don't even have a second to think about it?
Probably a little bit of both, but I think
I would say so.
teachers, I guess I hope teachers know how important they are and the essential value that they provide in motivating and building those relationships with students. And I think most teachers know that. I don't think the public in a lot of cases realizes that, that the work that teachers put in both inside and outside the classroom, not just grading, but thinking about their students and thinking about how to reach them, and the nights they spend awake in bed thinking about that one student that they can't quite get to, right? I still think about students I taught 20 years ago and wonder, what could I have done differently, right? And so I think teachers know their value. I sincerely hope that they all know how valuable they are. But I think that gets left out of the public discussion way too often.
That's our next podcast. That right there, that one. How do you think that, and we'll touch on this more, so maybe just a quick note, but like, how can, bringing it back to kind of AI, bringing it back to the classroom, how can how might a teacher be able to leverage AI so they can spend more of the time with building those relationships, fostering that understanding?
I think there's a couple ways. One of the ways that I've kind of been exploring is even kind of leveraging AI as a thought partner in terms of, how do I provide first best instruction for my students? So what might some misconceptions about, here's what I want to do as a part of the lesson. What are some of the misconceptions that my students might have just in general? and then being able to address that in first best instruction so that I can bring my best up. So I'm not thinking about like, oh, first period got the best of me or sixth period got the best of me and first period, like so I can give my best option the first go around. But I think also in terms of connecting to students, even some of that is just like, hey, generate 3 questions I can ask my students about, the process that they're working on. I'm having them write an essay. What can I ask them about themselves, or how can I engage with them to develop that connection? Especially considering I have no idea what students are listening to these days in terms of music. I don't like, what are some of those like pop culture-y things that we know our students care about and we want to be able to connect with them. But like, hey, give me a really quick rundown about how Coachella went, and maybe like there's a way that I can connect with students in that way. And just being intentional with that.
You just reminded me of that Steve Buscemi meme, the "Hey youths."
Hey, hello, fellow youths. Yes. What are some of those things that I can chat with them about that they care about? Because that just helps to build that relationship.
I like that idea, Brittany. That's a really cool use of AI. And I think most educators by now have seen the tools or seen lesson design, but I think being really intentional with, I'm creating this lesson, but how do I connect with my students before or during, or like, how do I use this lesson to further connect with them or connect them to the content? I think are great questions to ask. How do I make this content relevant to my students in 2026, right? Like, those are really nice ways to connect what you're doing to what matters to students. So beyond just creating a lesson plan, like, how do we use it as a thought partner? Yeah.
So yeah, I love that kind of as a thought partner. It's a nice touch. And that leads into the next question that we've got here is, and I think this is a question I have as well. If AI can produce finished essay, does the end work product still mean the same thing? Is it still about, 5 paragraphs, an intro paragraph, and a summary paragraph, and 3 paragraphs in the middle? So here you go.
Yeah, I think a lot about this as someone who coaches, teachers in the classroom. And I know we've had conversations too, right? The calculator example gets thrown out a lot. Like, well, with calculator, they didn't need to know the algorithmic way to solve problems. I have some math friends who are like, photo math has been doing this for years before AI came out. But what that meant was you could shift your practice to thinking about math. And we kind of see that now in the way that we teach Common Core frameworks. It's really thinking about how you are understanding the concept. And so my wonder, right, is around, using AI as a tool to think about our thinking over the compliance to meet the need of the 5-paragraph essay. And then what does that look like in terms of building out a process in your classroom that allows for you to benchmark the thinking as opposed to pin the success on the end product, right? I think a lot of teachers value that learning is progressive, and we need to check in. We do our formative assessments, and yes, we can have a summative assessment, but how do we really kind of wrap that up into the process, right? Feedback is a part of the process. How do students respond to the feedback is a part of the process. We talk a lot about wanting to make sure that our students are prepared for real world soft skills. Like, I know I have evals. I know, I get feedback from coworkers, like, how do I learn to collaborate and then take that feedback? And then what do I do with it as a part of that learning too? And maybe that's a bigger answer than an essay, right? So I think that's one of the steps that we kind of move towards. But with that being said, right, that shouldn't come at the expense of no support for a teacher either, right? Understanding kind of like the gap in redesign, that also takes time. Redesigning that lesson and assessment also takes time to be able to include those benchmark processes.
That doesn't happen overnight. That's going to take a while to, to redo or revise those lessons. Brittany and I have been involved in another project that's not the purpose of this webinar, but we've been in Riverside County, we've been piloting a seal of AI literacy and next-gen intelligence for students, or AI readiness and next-gen intelligence. It's a long name, so I struggle with it, but we've been fortunate to have some of the students from Brittany's district piloting that. And so I've got to see a firsthand glimpse at how they're, I don't think Brittany even knows this yet, how they're using it. And they've shared conversations that they've had with their preferred AI platform, and seeing how they engage with it and how they're developing their thinking and outlining their thoughts and creating with it has been really helpful for me as a professional who's working in this space. But it's given me just a lot of insight into how students are working today, how they're learning today, and actually a lot of hope, because a lot of what they report through this course is that they don't want it to do their thinking for them. They don't want it to be their voice. They want to learn the skills that they need to use AI as, a support, but maintain their critical thinking, maintain their voice. They're not ready to just hand it all over to AI and, wipe their hands of it. They're really thoughtfully engaging with these tools. I mean, are there students, of course, that are going to use it to write their essay and turn it in and not think about what it wrote? Sure. I mean, but that was always something that we had in education, right? They can just do it faster now. But the ones that I've been seeing through the course, and then we'll launch this course a little more widely to Riverside County students next year, but it's been really fascinating to see their thoughts and to see how committed they are to their own learning and mastering concepts, but at the same time, they want it to be.
We'll give her a second. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Sorry, you dropped off just for a second.
Oh, I did? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No.
real brief. Go ahead.
Okay. But it's been interesting to see, how they are engaging with their own learning and driving their own learning with these tools. And being mindful of the impact of these tools on their own development and, and their future skills that they'll need.
So the kids are all right, is what you're saying?
I think the kids are all right.
Well, and I recently have been looking at, we have like our student advisory council for our superintendent put together their own AI student user guidelines. And we've been looking at what some of those things are. Yeah. And the students are, I think, more aligned with teachers than I think teachers maybe get the opportunity to, have the discussion about. So, even some of the things that the students are saying are healthy AI prompts, things like, can you explain this to me in a simpler way? Can you show me the steps and then let me try? Give me examples so I can practice. Help me improve this draft without rewriting it. Like, these are the questions that kids are saying are good. And a lot of the time, too, they've also kind of gotten to the point, and this is one I know Heidi and I have talked about before, and I'm so happy that it's kind of trickled down into this, is just having students ask themselves that question: is this helping me learn? And am I still doing the thinking? Those are things that kids are also wanting to make sure they're doing. So,
and those are things that we need our educators to help kids think about, right? Think about their thinking, because this is their first time on the planet, right? They haven't been through this before. And AI is, even though—
Heidi, you've been on the planet more than once.
Oh, well,
I'm just kidding.
in my opinion, this is their first time on the planet, right? And they don't know what they don't know, and they need to be guided on these things, and they're looking for that guidance, and we're all still trying to figure out what that guidance is, right? It dropped on all of us at the same time, and so students are seeking that guidance. We're trying to help educators with that guidance and, working with students, getting student feedback, and working with educators, getting educator feedback. But I like that Brittany mentioned, I think they're way more aligned than we would all assume, right? And then we would expect.
Where do you think that, I mean, that's really is interesting because you've got two groups of people who are more aligned, but probably both think the other is not aligned.
Mhm.
Where do you think that disconnect comes from? Where do you think that comes from?
It's a
I
really good question.
Yeah,
Go
it's a
ahead.
really good
That's
question.
a good
I
question.
do think it's there's that interesting dynamic in a classroom, right? Where a teacher in some cases is more comfortable learning alongside their students in real time compared to maybe I want to be prepared so I can guide this conversation. And I think some of that is right. This was dropped on all of us at the same time. And some of us are 50 and some of us are 15. And we all have different brains in terms of how we look at what this tool can do. Um, and so I think that there's maybe some life experience involved,
Mhm.
and there's some concerns around just that value add, right? If we're hoping to guide students and shape kind of their perspective, maybe our perspective differs in general around AI entirely, which is another kind of interesting conundrum in terms of AI, just kind of where like socially we kind of land with
Mhm.
this tool itself as well. And full transparency, my mind changes every day. Something new drops, like a ChatGPT image generation 2.0 that can like make up it can do a handwritten essay, like generate an image of a handwritten essay. So we've effectively put ourselves, kind of back in the corner in that perspective of like, okay, so I'm going to avoid AI by making my students do a handwritten essay and then turn it in. So it's a very interesting, just kind of dynamic and ebb and flow that we kind of are seeing with this tool in general.
And I think, it's not all or nothing either. And I'm with you, Brittany. I read things and hear things. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And one day I'm like, yay, AI. And the next day I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, AI. It just really depends on the day
Mhm.
and the week. But in terms of classroom use, I don't think a classroom has to be all in on AI or all out, right? There can be plenty of things when you set expectations that you say, we're going to do this together. You're going to do this collaboratively. We're going to close our tech. We're not going to use it because I want you to develop XYZ skill. And I think eh, in society in general right now, we're often tasked with being completely on one side or the other.
Mhm.
Not tasked with, but expected to, really wait, I'll
Commit.
stay out of that, but really be on one side or the other,
Yes.
right? But and so I think it's important to remember that our educators are the leaders in our classrooms, and it's their best judgment on, do we need AI for this? Is AI okay for this, or is it not? Like, what is the task at hand? Is it okay that AI takes this task and does this, does the editing, does whatever, or is it not? Do we need you to develop the skill on your own? But I think it's setting those expectations for your students so that students don't feel like they're having to use this in the shadows, so they can be honest about their use. And again, that depends on your school and your district and what they have access to, right? There's a lot of caveats within this conversation, but one thing we hear from students a lot is they're afraid to ask for help or to let anybody know that they're using it because it's been branded as cheating so much. And yeah, students absolutely can be academically dishonest with AI. I'm not saying that that is not the case, right? But I think helping them understand, well, actually, that was not exactly your work, right? This
Mhm.
and versus, okay, well, let's talk about when is it acceptable to use it and when is it not. I think it goes a long way in helping guide students toward, effective use and keeping their voice and, um, and maintaining an ethical use of AI for their studies. So
Yeah, and
all of
that's
that
where
easier
the
said than done. Oh, I know, reckon
yeah,
all of that
absolutely.
easier, all of it easier said than done. So yeah.
And that's where a lot of that conversation that we have too around that expectations and communicating those expectations so clearly every time. And, giving credence to um and really like objectively defining what this looks like for me in my classroom right now, right? As a teacher, that's where you are providing that guidance. I'm saying brainstorming looks like this. Let's model that together. And now you have an understanding of what brainstorming with AI looks like and what my expectations are as the instructional leader in the classroom. And it's really just that opportunity, you know, to guide the student and we always look at it as an opportunity for a conversation. Again, bringing it back to the relationships, like, hey, like, what were you thinking in terms of when you asked AI to do this thing that maybe was a step further than what we had talked about? What led to that? And how do I help clarify that for you? As your teacher.
Interesting.
Uh,
Please
it,
continue, Heidi.
oh no, I wanted to point out my background is secondary. So my lens usually comes from the secondary point of view. If we're talking about really young students, the conversation's different than I know Brittany is also secondary. And so our lens just tends to go that direction. But if you have,
Yeah.
young kids, if you're talking K2, like we mentioned at the beginning of this, they really shouldn't be engaging with AI themselves at all. And so that's a different set of expectations and a different conversation. But generally speaking, when we talk about student use in AI, we're really looking at those secondary levels. I wanted to clarify that because I don't think a kindergartner should be asking AI to do their writing on any level.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We live in a kind of these zones of kind of understanding, typically, at least here where I'm at, and a level of awareness and maybe understanding of like, hey, when you talk to Siri, like that's AI, or like when you are, looking at maps, like Google Maps and your mom pulls it up in the car, like that's AI. Some of those examples. And then, with our intermediate is when we start to get into that further developing kind of like, how does AI work? And what does it know about me? I'm starting to get online a little bit more. I'm maybe over 13. I have some social media. I'm able to access those things. And then really our 9 through 12s are really looking at like responsible use. And I understand what it means to be a digital citizen, in terms of what AI literacy and that word means. And so I would agree. Well, that K2 conversation is always monitored, always modeled, always guided.
Well, and that's, I mean, it's almost to the point where these are tools that the kids, especially the older kids, are going to be using at some point, whether they're using it directly, or indirectly with things like Siri and Amazon and Alexa and all these other sorts of things. So having awareness is almost kind of a responsibility at some level. But that leads into kind of our next question, which is a little bit of a shift, but tied into, and it's every generation has these, right? We had the slide rule in the early 19th or early 20th century, excuse me. We had calculators. We had and then all of a sudden, Google comes into place, and there were a lot of search engines before Google, but now Google is here, very, very prominent. I think 80% of news runs through Facebook and through Google. So we've had these technological shifts before, and I remember when search engines first started gaining popularity, that there was a conversation: we need to keep the internet out of the school. And that's a broad oversimplification of the statement at the time. There was a lot of very thoughtful people on both sides of that argument and that sort of thing, but that was the conversation. We don't have that conversation anymore. There is no conversation that the school shouldn't have the internet, or any such thing. So is this just another technological shift that every generation seems to have? We'll have another AI in another 20 years that'll be really big, or is this meaningfully different? And how should teachers kind of approach it from that perspective?
Trying to be thoughtful.
I know.
I wish I had a crystal
Yeah.
ball. I do wish I had a crystal ball.
Well, you picked the lotto numbers. Let's be honest.
Or, I mean, I don't know if and what the next biggest thing could and would be, other than further developments with AI and robotics and the way, AI is kind of embedded into society. I I think that this is the most impactful technological change. I mean, you mentioned it's hard with the internet, because you mentioned the internet, and I started teaching when the internet started to make its way into schools, and that was a big shift, but I don't really remember a time teaching without it. So I can't I mean, I taught when it was very primitive and we were very limited on what we could do. Of course, I went to school without the internet, so I remember, but the internet did change education significantly, right? It gave us the ability to do some things that we couldn't do before, and that's the power of I think, on the good side of what it can do. I do think this is a major shift. I don't think it's a shift we can wait out and just hope that it goes away. I think this is a societal change that we are already seeing the impacts, that you can see AI and AI discussions in the news not related to education all the time. And our students are very quickly, especially our young students, not going to remember a world where this was not everywhere. And so, if we look at predictions for the workforce and look at predictions for jobs that are going to be available or jobs that are going to need to shift, prepping our students, again, back to those soft skills. We were looking at a report from the World Economic Forum last week, and the number one skill that it listed that cannot be replicated by AI is empathy. And so I think the shift is not just about the technology, but the shift is about, okay, how do we now not just prepare our students for work, but prepare our students for a world where empathy is the number one thing that they need. And you can see it all around. There's both a lot of empathy in the world, and there's a lack, in my opinion, of empathy in the world. And, it is a technological shift, but I think it could, and I hope that it does provide a shift for humanity in a good way, in being really mindful of the importance of what we bring as human beings versus what machines can do. And so I don't know what the next 20 years will bring, but I think it's fascinating, and I'm excited by it. Good. Brittany.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting in the sense of like, and I like that because you've got empathy, creativity, imagination, like these skills that AI is, at the end of the day, it's a probability engine. It's not thinking, it's not creative, it doesn't have empathy. So I think that's a really, really valuable insight. Sorry, I cut you off a little bit there, Brittany.
No, I look at it from a lens of curiosity in terms of like, what could we do if we turn certain things over, to AI in terms of probability and understanding, what's been projected in terms of like agents doing work and like, you know, that token economy in terms of having enough, power to do all of the work that these agents could then do just by connecting with one another. And does that make time for us to connect to each other? Um, I think that I try to stay curious and optimistic about what does that look like for us, as people. Like if I have to do less emails, maybe you send me less emails if you think AI is responding to your emails. Or,
Send
maybe
you more because AI can send
because AI can do more. That's the trade-off, right? Everything it's interesting in that way. But when we think about the idea of like Google and kind of like the calculators changing arithmetic and Google changing recall, like AI really is the first thing that can do the assignment, right? Based on what the ask is. And so how do we start to look at that product and look at why it's good, why it's not good? Really think about what it is that we are getting as output, and how do we know, like, right? We know that there is the opportunity for hallucination in AI. How do we continue to fact check some of these things? Those are kind of the skills that our students are looking for in terms of, right, how do I know how to participate as a human in the world
Right.
when something
Yeah.
I see, I don't even know if it's true. But what you do know is true is when you sit down next to someone and you're able to have a conversation and connect to them in a meaningful way. Like that experience is what I hope AI opens up the opportunity to do, because it's taken all of our little menial productivity tasks away. It frees up time for those relationships to be built. You're not having to sit on hold, for half an hour to make a doctor's appointment. Some of those things are what I try to stay optimistic about when it comes to AI. But then again, knowing or trying to also remain cognizant of the people who are in charge of AI right now are just people, right? We don't have a lot of regulation right now, and knowing kind of that ebb and flow also kind of is something I try to stay curious about. Because again, the AI integration into a classroom can be beneficial, but you get to make that choice as the teacher as well. So if you're able to leverage it to free up your time for relationship building in your classroom, excellent. That's kind of what I'm hoping for when we see teachers start to integrate those things. Is it an opportunity for a student to get some reteaching in a differentiated way from something that you have built for them? Can they build something themselves that helps them do that with your guidance? All of those pieces really are kind of at the core of why we are educators to begin with, helping a student grow in a way that makes sense to them, with a skill, hopefully, that they'll need. Well, not hopefully, most likely, right? They'll need once they leave the system. So, yeah.
Well, it's and that you're leading right into the next question. You're fantastic at this.
Uh-oh.
It's a great segue.
Uh-oh.
Um, so a lot of, and I wrote this question, but I'm going to try and reframe it a little bit here, because we know from my world, right, from the online course world, right, we know that online course completion is largely abysmal. We're talking 5%, 10% for good courses and that sort of thing. And that's kind of self-directed, work by yourself, do your own thing. We know that we want to do things to increase engagement, because that helps increase course completion and all those other sorts of things, without making the teacher just a babysitter, right? Where, hey, get that course done, get your work done, get your work done, get your work done. How can the teacher start to use AI to do the thing that you're talking about, which is maybe building more of a relationship, having more empathy, being able to spend more time on those higher value soft interactions? What are some of the things that a teacher can do to take advantage of that opportunity? Or maybe what's one thing? We'll start there.
again, this is easier said than done. So I want to be mindful of the work it takes to make this sort of shift. But I think in what we're asking students to do, it goes back to that process over product. But if we're working with students to develop empathy and to develop some of those soft skills, in my opinion, it starts to look like a more collaborative learning environment where students may be using AI to create a plan for something, but students are working together to design that plan, identify why this XYZ thing needs to exist, right? And then they're working together to kind of, own that learning, right? So I imagine a lot more cooperative work. I imagine a lot more work where students are speaking either in front of a group or speaking to each other in smaller groups and developing those types of skills. So where they may be learning some content, but then applying that content in ways where they're having to interact with one another about that content or interact with the public about that content or, building things that would benefit their community, within whatever it is, the scope that you're teaching, right? But again, I recognize that that's difficult to do, to wake up and say, I'm going to change the things that I have been doing and change them into all these cooperative learning and things, and we're going to be going out into the public. And like, I'm totally, speaking of empathy, I'm totally empathetic of how much work that requires. But I think if we're looking at making changes to what we're asking students to do, even if it's just one change this year, it's like maybe there's a lesson or a unit or something that you teach, and in a few small ways, you can alter that to really encourage more of that cooperative or collaborative learning or building together, or, maybe you're building in, okay, well, we're learning about this. What might be something I can do with my students that does encourage them to think empathetically, right? What might they write about? What might they talk about as a group? What might the debate be that, and all of those things are building skills within themselves, right? But if you could do one thing and not everything, I think it's a good starting place, and recognizing that it's tricky. It's a tricky thing to redo what you've been doing and how you've been teaching and how we've all been through credentialing programs. Like, all of those things taught us one way, and now we're being asked to look at things differently, and it's a tall order.
Yeah, 1,000%. A very tall order in terms of, especially when you have things at work, right? Like you you can see that learning happening. And so it's not those. We're not,
don't throw those out.
Throwing those out.
Yeah.
It's those things that really just maybe they're compliance based. Maybe they are just something we need to have students do. But really, like, I mean, we're talking about AI, leverage AI to kind of get some feedback on, like, how do I get students to ask questions, gather, and how am I evaluating their ability to gather evidence, right? The evaluation of the skill, right? Critical thinking is, how do I bring together information and then think about it, synthesize it, and then communicate, right? Via essay, maybe, maybe not, and that communication component looks different. And just getting ideas from AI in terms of how can I evaluate that process comparatively, and then giving students the opportunity to communicate it in their voice, right? Heidi mentioned an authentic audience and purposeful, implementation in the community, and that really tying students to feeling motivated to better, right, their communities in which they participate. And that's part of what being an educator is entirely. So it's just to give it a go. Pick a one thing. Pick an opener that might be open up a conversation with your students about, hey, what are you guys into? in terms of supporting your community, what's important to you. And then just say, hey, my kids care about, this thing. Help me write write one lesson on this topic that would allow me to show in real time or understand in real time the student process of learning. And even then, that can feel overwhelming. So build in some supports that have the students think about how they're learning and how do I know that they understand. So they can start doing some metacognition around like, hey, build me a tool that tells me that a student understands XYZ thing that they complete. Building in a process for reflection is another just kind of method for getting students to think about that. And that just really kind of lends itself to, right, not adding another thing to a teacher's plate in terms of really the power of a teacher is being someone who sees them and won't let them disappear.
Oh, I like that. That's
Mhm.
nice.
Can I
Please go
sorry.
ahead. Please go ahead. No, go
That
ahead.
was such
Heidi,
a nice
please.
line to end on. I didn't want to jump in, but I wanted to shout out a couple of resources, free resources that are available. If you're looking for either lessons about AI or lessons that have AI integrated in a way that you can have thoughtful discussions about it. Stanford University has a series of resources that are excellent for secondary.
Mhm.
It's Stanford Craft, if you want to Google that. And just about any topic you're teaching at the high school level has a lesson, like it talks about ethics and the arts, ethics and music creation. How do I write with AI? Like it has so many wonderful resources for secondary that are really thoughtful about the integration of AI into what you're already teaching. I love recommending that. They're
Mhm.
fantastic. Again, that's Stanford. So Stanford Craft, Craft is where those are. And then if you're looking for resources to have discussions around AI, Common Sense Education, which you
Mhm.
likely have heard of, they have some amazing resources for helping kids learn about AI and discussing things that are good about AI and things that are dangerous about AI. So if you're looking for resources to even help you have these conversations with students, those are two great places. They're free. Everything's available. Slide decks are made. Um, Lesson guide is made. So again, trying to take some of that off your plate
Yeah.
and give you some good resources that are really well done.
Yeah, I'll throw out AI EDU also
Oh,
has some bell ringer activities that you can do with students too, sentence starters for some of these conversations too, just as
So we'll
another.
include all this available with this episode for sure. Well, an hour has gone by, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm going to give the two of you the last word. Um, Although Brittany's last word was really, really
yeah. I
quite
can't
nice.
top it.
We're gonna remember that one.
I can't top it.
But we started this whole thing is you matter, and we know that there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around all technologies. But to Heidi's point, this feels like a bigger shift than just Google or a calculator or slide rule. And I know those things sound ridiculous in the context of AI, the slide rule, but the slide rule was a really big deal at the time. And so what is kind of just the parting message to the educators out there that are worried? They're worried for a whole host of reasons. They're worried because they think their robots are coming to take their jobs. They're worried because they think their students might be cheating. They're worried because they have to redo lessons that they have been doing really, really well, and they think that they've got to totally change everything and all of those sorts of things. What is one thing that you would share with those educators to maybe the ones that are worried, not necessarily the ones that are, we all know the teachers that are like, oh, this is really cool and
Yeah.
I can't wait to do this, right? But that's not the majority of teachers, and it's not the majority because teachers are lazy or are incurious or anything like that. They have lives, they have families, they have everything that everybody else has, and they have to prioritize just like everybody else. So to those teachers that are feeling overwhelmed, that are worried about for a whole variety of reasons, what can you share with them based on what you've seen that maybe walk them off a ledge a little bit?
I would say, I mean, give yourself a break too. It doesn't, I know it may feel like everything needs to happen right now, and depending on your school or district, that may be the perceived messaging that you're getting, but you know, it's tough to be a teacher, and unless you've done it, everyone thinks they can do it,
Mhm.
right? But unless you've done it and you've spent a day or a week or a month or years in the classroom, it takes a physical toll, an emotional toll, all of those things. There's so much pressure on being a teacher and the work that goes into that. And I would say number one, you know, just give yourself a break. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have the plan ready to go. You know, a small step, asking for help if you're seeking, you know, if you want help and you're looking for help, asking those around you or asking in your district, or you can reach out to us, right? Um, but you don't need to be out there alone, and you don't need to be, you know, working on this after hours and on the weekends. Like, don't, you know, it's important to give your students the things that they need and to set them up for the future. But it's also important for you to have a life and not be so stressed that you can't see straight, right? So it's giving yourself a break and giving yourself permission to try some things and know that they might fail, and that's okay, and that you can try again. You can try something else.
Yeah, I would say, right, for people who are worried, um, there's cynicism and there's optimism. And I think that skepticism, healthy skepticism, isn't a bad place to be. I think knowing all of the things that are continually in motion with AI, I think some healthy, questioning of it as a whole for the purposes that we've kind of talked about in terms of bias and, accuracy and how does it impact students is all reasonable. Um, and with that being said, sometimes it's just a jump in and let it decide what you're eating for dinner, you know?
Yeah. Mhm.
Sometimes it's just so it doesn't have to be um it doesn't have to be serious. It can be fun. In terms of how it gets leveraged. And when you are trying and modeling, sometimes that's enough for your students to see as well. The way you approach it with curiosity allows them to model that too. So um, worry, uh, understood, heard. Um, optimism also, but there is something to be said about that middle line in terms of all of the things that are coming at us so fast. So I think just practicing with what you're comfortable with is fine.
Well, perfect. That was great. The two of you have been awesome. We will share all of their contact information. So all of Brittany's contact information, Heidi's contact information, those that want to be associated with the resources that they both shared on this little episode. I want to thank you both for being here. This was super fun conversation. Um, Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.